The rain was ice cold against Marcus Chen's skin, but he didn't feel it. He was on his knees in the middle of the street, his $3,000 suit ruined, his hands shaking as he looked up at the homeless woman standing over him. "Please," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "Marry me." Around them, people had stopped. Phones were out. This was about to go viral, and Marcus didn't care. The woman stared down at him with eyes that seemed to look right through his soul. Then she opened her mouth and spoke 3 words that would destroy everything he thought he knew about his life. "You already did," she said. Marcus felt like everything around him was shattering, because those eyes, he recognized them. And out of nowhere, it hit him. He understood everything, even though it seemed impossible. Before we continue, kindly hit the subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from, to understand how a billionaire ended up begging a homeless woman in the rain and why her 3 words broke everything he believed about his life. We have to go back to where it all started. 72 hours earlier, to the moment everything changed. Marcus Chen did the same thing every evening. Leave the office at exactly 6:45. Take the private elevator down 47 floors, step into the car waiting for him, get home at 7:23. Everything happens the same way every day, but on this particular Monday, something made him stop. His driver was holding the door open. The car was running. Everything was ready. Then Marcus said something that shocked everyone. "I'm walking tonight," he said. His driver blinked. "Sir, you can take your leave. I'll walk," Marcus said. In 8 years, Marcus had never walked home from work. Not once. His driver looked concerned, probably wondering if his employer was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe he was. Marcus started walking, his $800 shoes clicking against the Manhattan pavement. The evening crowd flowed around him, people rushing to catch trains, to get home, to start their real lives after selling their daylight hours to corporations like his. He'd gone 6 blocks when he saw her. She was sitting against a brick wall near a closed storefront, wrapped in layers of dirty clothing. A cardboard sign beside her read, "Anything helps. God bless." Marcus had seen 1,000 homeless people on these streets. His company donated $10 million annually to homeless services. He considered himself generous, aware, compassionate. But this woman made him stop walking. She wasn't looking at the passers-by. She wasn't holding out a cup. She was just sitting there, staring at nothing. And something about her face. Marcus felt his chest constrict. He couldn't see her clearly from this distance. The grime, the tangled hair obscured her features. But her profile, the way she held her head, something about the curve of her neck made his hands start to shake. A businessman bumped into Marcus, muttered an apology, and kept moving. Marcus stood frozen, staring at this homeless woman, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't explain. Then she turned and looked directly at him. Her eyes. Marcus couldn't breathe. Those eyes were grey-green, unusual, striking even through the dirt and exhaustion, and they looked at him with an expression he couldn't name. Not anger, not hope, something deeper, something that made his skin crawl with recognition he couldn't place. He took a step toward her. She immediately looked away, back to staring at nothing. Marcus stood there for another 30 seconds, people flowing around him like he was a stone in a river. Then he forced himself to keep walking. It took him an hour to get home instead of the usual 38 minutes. He kept stopping, turning around, almost going back. His mind kept showing him those eyes. Why did those eyes feel familiar? That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, looking out at the glittering city, seeing nothing but those grey-green eyes. At 2 a.m., he poured himself a scotch with shaking hands. This was ridiculous. She was a random homeless woman. He'd seen her for 5 seconds. There was no reason for this feeling in his chest, this sense that something catastrophic was happening, and he was too blind to see it. Marcus went to his home office and did something he hadn't done in 7 years. He unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a single photograph in a silver frame, face down. Marcus's hand trembled as he picked it up and turned it over. The photo showed him at 28, smiling wider than he'd smiled in years. His arm was around a woman in a white sundress. They were on a beach somewhere, the ocean sparkling behind them. The woman was laughing at something off camera, her head tilted back, her eyes crinkled with joy. Those eyes. Grey-green. Unusual. Beautiful. Marcus dropped the photograph. It clattered on the desk. The glass. Cracking. No. No, it was impossible. The woman in this photo was Emma, his wife. His dead wife. Emma had died 7 years ago. Car accident. Her car had gone off a bridge in the middle of winter. The water was so cold, so deep. They'd recovered the car but never found her body. The police said the current must have carried her downstream, maybe all the way to the ocean. They'd held a funeral with an empty casket. Marcus had stood there in his black suit, accepting condolences, feeling nothing. He'd been numb for months, and when the numbness finally faded, he'd buried himself in work, built his empire, became a billionaire, never dated again, never even considered it. The woman in that photograph was dead. But those eyes, they looked exactly like the homeless woman he had seen. Marcus grabbed his phone and called his head of security. It rang 4 times before a sleepy voice answered. "Mr. Chen, it's 2 in the morning. I need you to find someone," Marcus said, his voice shaking. A homeless woman. 5th Avenue and 52nd Street. She was there this evening around 7. Then there was a pause. "Sir, is everything all right?" "Just find her. I need to know everything. Who she is, where she came from, how long she's been on the streets, everything," Marcus said. "Of course, sir. I'll start first thing." "Now. Start now." Marcus hung up and picked up the photograph again, staring at Emma's face. Emma was dead. The police had confirmed it. There had been an investigation. A death certificate. She was gone. But what if? No. He was being insane. Grief did strange things to people, even 7 years later. He'd seen a homeless woman with similar eyes, and his broken mind had made a connection that didn't exist. Marcus forced himself to go to bed, but sleep never came. The next day, Marcus left his office at exactly the same time as always. But instead of taking his car, he walked. He told himself he was just checking, just confirming that his mind had been playing tricks. The woman wouldn't be there, or if she was, she'd look nothing like Emma. He'd see how ridiculous he was being and could finally sleep. But as Marcus approached 52nd Street, his heart started racing. She was there. Same spot. Same cardboard sign. But today she had her head down, reading something. A book, water-damaged and falling apart. But she was absorbed in it. Marcus stood 20 feet away, staring, from this angle, with the evening light hitting her face. God, she looked so much like Emma. The shape of her face. The way she held the book close, like Emma used to do when she was deeply focused, even the way she sat with one leg tucked under her. Marcus found himself walking forward before he'd made a conscious decision. He stopped right in front of her. She didn't look up. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice barely working. The woman slowly raised her eyes from the book, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. It was her. It was Emma. Older, thinner, marked by years of hard living, but it was her face. Those cheekbones, that nose, those impossible eyes. Marcus thought to himself. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, and even her voice. It was raspy from the streets, damaged, but underneath. "Emma?" Marcus whispered. The woman's expression didn't change. "I think you have me confused with someone else." No, Your eyes, you have—" Marcus couldn't form words. "What's your name?" "Does it matter?" she asked. "Please, just tell me your name," Marcus said. The woman stared at him for a long moment, then went back to her book. "Sarah." "Sarah," Marcus repeated. "Not Emma. Of course not Emma. Emma was dead. How long have you been here? Here specifically? A week? On the streets? 6 months? Does that satisfy your curiosity? Sarah asked. Her words were sharp, but her voice was flat, empty, like she'd had this conversation 1,000 times. I'm sorry, I didn't mean… Marcus pulled out his wallet. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. Here, please, take this. He held out $500 bills. The woman, Sarah, looked at the money, then back at her book. I don't need your guilt money. It's not guilt money. I just want to help, Marcus said. Do you? Sarah asked. Yes. Then leave me alone, she said. Marcus stood there, the money still extended, feeling like he'd been slapped. Finally, he put the bills down on top of her cardboard sign and walked away. He made it half a block before he turned back. The money was still there. She hadn't touched it. She was just reading her book, completely ignoring it. That night, Marcus's head of security called. I found her, sir. Her name is Sarah Mitchell, age 36. She's been on the streets for approximately 7 months. Before that, the trail goes cold. No employment records, no previous address, nothing. It's like she didn't exist before she became homeless. That's impossible. Everyone leaves a trail, Marcus said. Not this one. I'm still digging, but… Mr. Chen, can I ask why you're interested in this particular individual? Marcus looked at the photograph of Emma on his desk. Because she looks like my wife. There was a long pause. Sir, your wife passed away. I know, Marcus snapped. Just keep looking. There has to be something. But over the next 2 days, his security team found nothing. Sarah Mitchell appeared to have materialized out of thin air 7 months ago. On Wednesday evening, Marcus went back. He couldn't stop himself. This time, he brought food. Expensive takeout from the best restaurant in the city. Enough for 3 people. Sarah was there, in her spot, reading the same falling-apart book. I brought you dinner, Marcus said, setting the bags down in front of her. She looked at the bags, then at him. Why? Because you need to eat, Marcus said. I eat fine, Sarah replied. That's not… Marcus took a breath. Please, just take it. Sarah studied him with those impossible eyes. You're the 3rd rich man this week who's brought me food. You know what that tells me? What? Marcus asked. That feeding me makes you feel better about yourself. It's not about me at all, she said. The words stung because they were true. Marcus was trying to feel less crazy, trying to convince himself this woman was just a stranger, that if he could help her and move on, these impossible thoughts would stop. You're right, Marcus admitted. But the food is still here. You can throw it away if you want, or you can eat it. He started to walk away. Marcus, Sarah said. He froze, then turned back slowly. What did you say? That's your name, isn't it? Marcus Chen, CEO of Chen Industries, net worth $3.7 billion, Sarah said, her voice flat, reciting facts. You were in Forbes last month. How do you know my name is Marcus? Marcus asked, his heart pounding. I can read. You're famous, Sarah said. Nobody's called me Marcus in 7 years. Everyone calls me Mr. Chen, he said. Sarah's expression flickered for just a second. Something crossed her face. Pain, maybe, or memory. But it was gone so fast, Marcus couldn't be sure. Well, Marcus, she said, emphasizing his name, thank you for the food. She started distributing the containers to other homeless people nearby. An old man got the lobster. A young woman with a baby got the pasta. A teenager received the steak. Marcus watched her give away hundreds of dollars of food without keeping anything for herself. Why did you do that? He asked. They need it more than I do, Sarah said. That's not… Marcus moved closer. Please, just talk to me. 5 minutes. Why? She asked. Because you remind me of someone, Marcus said. For the first time, Sarah's mask cracked. She looked at him with an expression of such profound sadness that Marcus felt his chest tighten. Sarah turned away without another word, gathering her few possessions into a torn plastic bag. Marcus watched her movements. each gesture sending another shock of recognition through his system. The way she tucked her hair behind her left ear. The slight hesitation before she stood up, like her right knee hurt. Emma used to do that after her college soccer injury. Marcus's head of security had found nothing because there was nothing to find. Sarah Mitchell was a ghost, but ghosts didn't exist. Dead people stayed dead. Except Emma's body was never found. The thought had lived in the back of Marcus's mind for 7 years, a whisper he'd refused to hear. What if she survived? What if she was out there somewhere? But the police had been certain. The impact, the freezing water, the time elapsed before anyone found the car. No one could have survived. Marcus went back to his penthouse that night and opened the drawer again. This time he pulled out everything. The photograph, Emma's death certificate, the police report, the accident reconstruction. He spread it all across his desk and read through every detail with fresh eyes. The car had gone off Morrison Bridge at 11:47 p.m. on January 15th, 2019. A witness saw it happen, called 911. Emergency crews arrived within 12 minutes. They found the car 30 feet down in the icy river, driver's side door open, no body inside. The current was strong that night. Heavy winter runoff. The search continued for 3 weeks before they called it off. Presumed dead. That's what the certificate said. Not confirmed. Presumed. Marcus's hands started shaking again. He pulled up Sarah Mitchell's information on his computer. Age 36. Emma would be 36 now. Appeared on the streets 7 months ago. Emma disappeared 7 years ago. The math didn't work. Where had she been for 6.5 years? Unless the records were wrong. Unless Sarah had been homeless longer and just hadn't been documented until recently. The invisibility of the homeless made it easy to disappear into their ranks. Marcus opened his photo archive and pulled up every picture he had of Emma. Then he called his head of security back. The analysis took 48 hours. Facial recognition software comparing Emma's photographs to images his security team had discreetly captured of Sarah. The results came back Thursday evening. 87% match. The software couldn't account for the years of malnutrition, exposure, and hard living that had changed Sarah's face. But the bone structure, the distance between her eyes, the shape of her ears, all the things that didn't change with time, matched. Marcus stared at the report until the words blurred together. 87%. High enough to be the same person, low enough to be coincidence. He needed proof, real proof, something undeniable. Emma had a scar on her left shoulder from a childhood bike accident. A small crescent moon shape that she used to joke made her look like she'd been marked by destiny. If Sarah had that scar, then Marcus would know. He would finally, absolutely know. But how could he see her shoulder without revealing what he was looking for? Sarah barely tolerated his presence. She certainly wasn't going to undress for him. Marcus spent Friday in a daze, missing meetings, ignoring calls. His assistant knocked on his office. Doctor 3 times to check if he was all right. He wasn't. He was falling apart. 7 years of carefully constructed walls crumbling around a possibility that seemed more impossible with each passing hour. That evening, he went back to 52nd Street with a different plan. Sarah was there in the same spot, but this time she wasn't reading. She was talking to the old man Marcus had seen before, the one who'd gotten the lobster. They were sharing something from a paper bag, their conversation quiet. There was a gentleness in Sarah's expression that made Marcus's chest ache. Emma used to look like that when she talked to her grandfather. Marcus waited until their conversation ended before approaching. Sarah saw him coming, and her expression closed off immediately. He sat down on the pavement next to her without asking. She didn't protest, just stared straight ahead. Marcus had rehearsed what he was going to say, but now the words felt inadequate. Instead, he pulled out an envelope from his jacket and set it between them. Sarah glanced at it but didn't touch it. Smart. She'd learned that accepting things from strangers could come with strings attached. Inside the envelope was a key card. To a hotel room Marcus had booked 3 blocks away. A nice hotel, but not ostentatious. Clean sheets, hot water, room service, and most importantly, privacy. Marcus explained what it was. He explained that there were no conditions, no expectations. The room was paid for a week. She could use it or not. Her choice. He stood up to leave, then stopped. The question burned in his throat. The one he'd been afraid to ask, but he had to know. He asked if she'd ever been in an accident. A car accident, maybe. 7 years ago. Sarah's reaction was microscopic but unmistakable. A flinch. A brief tightening around her eyes. Then she said nothing. She picked up her book and went back to reading, dismissing him completely. Marcus walked away, his heart hammering. That flinch, that tiny crack in her armor. She knew something. She was hiding something. He almost reached the corner when he heard someone behind him. It was Sarah. She held the envelope tightly. She was no longer pretending. Her face looked serious and a little scary. She asked him why he was really doing this, what he wanted from her. And her voice, when she said it, wasn't flat anymore. It was trembling with barely controlled emotion. Marcus turned to face her fully. Under the streetlight, with her face clean of shadows, the resemblance was overwhelming. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't his imagination. This was Emma. Every instinct in his body screamed it. He told her everything, slowly and carefully. He said she looked exactly like his wife. He spoke about losing her 7 years ago. He admitted how unsettling it felt, how part of him feared his mind was turning against him, because a part of him still believed Sarah might somehow be her. The words stayed between them in the cold night air. People walked past, busy and distracted. No one noticed. On that Manhattan corner, a homeless woman and a billionaire stood facing each other, both shaken. Something important was breaking, and the rest of the world did not care. Sarah's face did something complicated. Pain and anger and fear and something else Marcus couldn't name all flickered across her features in the span of seconds. Then she did something that changed everything. She laughed. Not in a cruel way, not to mock him. It was fractured and unsteady. The kind of laugh that comes from holding too much inside for too long, when the release slips out through the wrong feeling. She asked Marcus if he really wanted to know the truth, if he was prepared for what it would cost him. Because some questions, once answered, destroy the person who asked them. Marcus said yes. He needed to know, whatever the cost. Sarah looked at him for a long moment with those impossible grey-green eyes. Then she told him to meet her at the hotel in 1 hour. She'd use the key. She'd tell him everything. But after tonight, he had to promise to never look for her again. Never try to help her. Never acknowledge her existence. She made him promise. Actually promise out loud, like they were children making a pact. Marcus promised. Even though he knew somehow that it was a lie. That whatever Sarah told him tonight would make it impossible to walk away. She left, disappearing into the evening crowd with the envelope clutched in her hand. Marcus went to the hotel and waited. 53 minutes later there was a knock on the door. When Marcus opened it, Sarah was standing there, and for the first time he could see her clearly. She'd taken a shower. Her hair was wet and dark instead of matted with grime. Her face was clean. And without the layers of dirt obscuring her features, there was no question anymore. It was Emma, older, haunted, changed by years of something terrible. Marcus couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. She had to be Emma. Then Sarah stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. She was wearing the same ragged clothes, but clean now, and Marcus could see how thin she'd become, how the years had carved away everything soft about her. She sat down on the edge of the bed and asked Marcus if he remembered January 15th, 2019. The night of the accident. Of course, Marcus still remembered. It was burned into his memory. They'd fought that night. A terrible fight about something Marcus couldn't even remember anymore. Emma had stormed out. 2 hours later, the police called to say her car was in the river. Emma nodded slowly. She remembered the fight too. She remembered getting in her car, furious, not paying attention to the icy roads. She remembered hitting the bridge railing, the sickening moment of weightlessness as the car went over, the impact with the water, the freezing cold rushing in. But here's what Marcus didn't know, what no one knew. Emma had gotten out of the car. The door had jammed on impact, but she'd managed to force it open, to swim to the surface despite the current trying to drag her down. She'd made it to the riverbank 1/2 mile downstream, hypothermic and barely conscious. A homeless man had found her, pulled her out of the water and saved her life. If she survived, why didn't she come home? Why didn't she call? Why let everyone think she was dead? Sarah explained to Marcus. Her expression went completely blank. Empty, like something inside her had died, even if her body hadn't. Because when I crawled out of that river, shivering and broken on the muddy bank, the first clear thought she had wasn't relief at being alive. It was a disappointment that I'd survived, Sarah explained. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah kept talking, her voice flat, reciting facts like they belonged to someone else's life. The fight that night hadn't been their first, it hadn't even been their worst. But it had been Emma's breaking point. Marcus didn't know because she'd never told him, but Emma had been falling apart for months. The pressure of being married to someone like Marcus, someone brilliant and driven and utterly focused on success. The loneliness of being invisible next to someone who burned so bright. The slow, creeping realization that she'd lost herself completely in trying to be the perfect wife for a man who barely noticed she existed. The accident hadn't been an accident at all. Emma had aimed for that bridge railing. She'd pressed the accelerator instead of the brake. She'd wanted to disappear, and the river had seemed like the perfect way to do it. But she survived, and lying there on that riverbank, she made a decision. She could return to her old life. Go back to Marcus. Go back to being ignored, feeling empty, and slowly falling apart inside. Or she could stay dead. Then she chose death. The homeless man who'd pulled her out didn't ask her questions. He gave her dry clothes, shared his shelter, taught her how to survive on the streets. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she could breathe. No expectations, no performance. No pretending to be happy in a marriage that had hollowed her out. She disappeared into the invisible population of New York's homeless, changed her name to Sarah. Let Emma Chen die in that river like she'd intended. And for 6.5 years, it had worked. She'd been free. Miserable and cold and hungry, but free. Until 7 months ago, when something changed. When the freedom started feeling like punishment. When she started wondering if she'd made a mistake. But by then, it was too late. She couldn't go back. Too much time had passed. Marcus had moved on, built his empire, become the billionaire everyone said he was destined to be. What would it accomplish to resurrect a ghost? So she stayed on the streets, and she convinced herself it was what she deserved. Then, 3 days ago, Marcus had walked past and looked at her, maybe for the first time in their entire marriage, and everything Emma had buried came screaming back to the surface. The room was completely silent when Sarah finished talking. Marcus sat there, trying to process what he'd just heard. His wife, his supposedly dead wife, had been alive this entire time. She had chosen to stay away. She had wanted to die rather than stay married to him. The pain was too much to handle. But beneath it sat something even worse. She understood. Because Sarah was right. Marcus hadn't seen her when they were married. He'd been so focused on building his company, on achieving success, on becoming someone important, that he'd forgotten to pay attention to the person who should have mattered most. He'd loved Emma, or thought he had, but he'd loved his ambitions more. And Emma had known it. She had felt it every single day until it broke her. Marcus tried to speak but couldn't form words. 7 years of grief, of guilt, of carefully constructed walls were collapsing. He'd mourned Emma. He'd thought he'd lost her. But the truth was so much worse. He'd lost her long before the accident. He just hadn't noticed. Sarah stood up to leave. She'd kept her promise. She'd told him the truth. Now Marcus had to keep his promise and let her go. But Marcus couldn't. Not now. Not after this. "Emma, wait!" She stopped him fast. "No! Call me Sarah!" She was already at the door, her fingers wrapped around the handle. She did not turn back. "You promised, Marcus," she said quietly. "You said you would let me go." "I know, but—" "No buts." Sarah pulled the door open. "I kept my end. Now you keep yours." She walked out without looking back. Marcus stood frozen, his hand half raised, the plea dying on his lips. The door clicked shut with a finality that echoed through the empty hotel room. He had made a promise. This time, he had to keep it, even if it broke him. Marcus hadn't slept. He hadn't even tried. He'd spent the entire night sitting in that hotel room, staring at the door Sarah had walked through, replaying every word she'd said. His wife had chosen death over their marriage. Not metaphorically. Literally. She'd aimed her car at that bridge railing because being dead seemed better than being married to him. The thought was a knife twisting in Marcus's chest. All these years, he'd mourned her, missed her, built a shrine to his grief in the locked drawer of his desk. And she'd been alive, choosing to stay away, choosing homelessness and hunger and cold over coming back to him. What kind of man did that make him? What kind of husband? Marcus knew the answer. The worst kind. He'd been so focused on building his empire, on achieving success, on becoming someone important, that he'd failed to notice his wife was drowning, failed to see that every day of their marriage was pulling her deeper underwater until she couldn't breathe. She'd tried to tell him. Emma had said so. Tried 100 times to explain that something was wrong, but Marcus had been too busy, too distracted, too certain that everything was fine to actually listen. By the time Emma drove her car off that bridge, she'd already been screaming for help for months. Marcus had just been too deaf to hear it. The sun rose over Manhattan, cold winter light filtering through the hotel windows. Marcus watched the city wake up and felt nothing. The same numbness that had defined the last 7 years was settling back over him like a familiar coat. But underneath the numbness, something else was growing, something that felt like panic. He'd let her walk away. Again. 7 years ago, he'd let his work consume him until Emma felt she had no choice but to disappear. And tonight, he'd let her walk out that door and back into the cold because he'd made a promise. But Marcus had finally heard what she wasn't saying. Emma hadn't chosen homelessness. She'd chosen escape. She'd chosen survival. And now she was trapped in a life she couldn't see a way out of because she was convinced she didn't deserve better. The same way she'd been trapped in their marriage, convinced she didn't deserve to ask for more. Marcus had failed her once by not listening. He wouldn't fail her again by listening to the wrong thing. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door. The park was quiet in the early morning. The usual crowds not yet awake. Marcus's breath misted in the cold air as he approached the bench where he'd first seen Sarah 2 days ago. She was there, curled up on the bench under that thin blanket, her backpack tucked under her head as a pillow. She looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the vibrant woman he'd married. Marcus's heart cracked open all over again. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. But Sarah's eyes opened before he got close, instantly alert in that way people who lived on the streets learned to be. She sat up when she saw him, her expression shuttering closed. "You promised." "I know." Marcus stopped a few feet away, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I'm breaking it." "Marcus," she snapped. "I'm sorry." The words came out rough, scraped raw from his chest. "I'm so sorry, Emma. For everything. For not listening. for not seeing, for being so focused on building something that I destroyed the only thing that actually mattered. Sarah looked away, her jaw tight. It's too late for apologies. I know, Marcus took a step closer. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know you chose to leave because staying was killing you, and that's on me, all of it. Then why are you here? Because I can't let you keep punishing yourself for my failures. Marcus's voice broke. You said you drove that car off the bridge because you couldn't breathe anymore, because you felt trapped and small and like you were drowning. Emma, that wasn't your fault. That was mine. I made you feel that way, and now you're living on the streets, convincing yourself you don't deserve anything better, and I can't. I won't. Let that be your life. Sarah stood up, her hands clenched into fists. You don't get to decide what my life is. You're right. I don't. Marcus met her eyes, letting her see every bit of pain and regret and desperate love he'd been carrying for 7 years. But I'm asking you to let me try to fix what I broke. You can't fix this, Sarah shouted. People slowed as they passed. A few stopped. Some lifted their phones. Others whispered, confused about why a billionaire was standing in the street with a homeless woman. Maybe not. Marcus took a breath. But I have to try. Emma, I've spent 7 years living in a world without you, and it's been hell. Every single day. And now I know you're alive, and you're suffering, and it's because of me. And I can't. His voice cracked completely. Marcus dropped to his knees on the cold concrete in front of the bench, looking up at the woman he'd loved and lost and somehow found again. Marry me. Sarah stared at him, like he'd lost his mind. What? Please, marry me. Marcus's voice was shaking, desperate. Right now. I don't care. Just marry me again, Emma. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the man you needed me to be 7 years ago. Let me show you that I've learned, that I'll listen, that I'll see you. Please. Sarah took a step back, shaking her head. Marcus, we're already married, legally. I never filed for... He did not care who was watching. Then renew our vows. Have a ceremony. I don't care what we call it. Marcus was begging now, and he didn't care. Pride meant nothing. Dignity meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was the woman standing in front of him. Just give me a chance. One chance. If I fail you again, I'll let you go. I swear it. But please, Emma. Please. For a long moment, Sarah just looked at him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, her face a battlefield of emotions Marcus couldn't read. Then she spoke 3 words that destroyed him. I can't, Marcus. The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus felt something inside him shatter completely, all the hope he'd been clinging to splintering into 1,000 pieces. I can't, Sarah said again, her voice breaking. You don't understand. I'm not the woman you married anymore. That Emma, she died on that bridge 7 years ago. I'm someone else now. Someone broken and damaged and... I don't care. Marcus was still on his knees, tears streaming down his face. I don't care if you're different. I don't care if you're broken. Emma, I'm broken too. I've been broken since the day I lost you. And maybe 2 broken people can figure out how to heal together. Sarah shook her head, backing away. You deserve better than this. Better than me. Stop, Marcus stood up, closing the distance between them. Stop deciding what I deserve. Stop deciding you're not worth fighting for. You are, Emma. You always have been. I was just too stupid and blind to see it. I love you. The words came out fierce, desperate. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day in 7 years. And I know I don't deserve you. I know I failed you in every way that matters. But I'm asking, no, I'm begging for one more chance. Not to go back to what we were. To build something new, something better. Something where you can breathe. Sarah was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to ever be whole again? Then we'll be broken together. Marcus reached out slowly, carefully, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand in his. Her fingers were ice cold. Please, Emma. Just try. That's all I'm asking. Try. For a long moment, Sarah didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood there, with Marcus's hand wrapped around hers, tears falling, her breath coming in shaky gasps. Then, so quietly Marcus almost didn't hear it, she whispered, "Okay." Marcus couldn't breathe. "Okay," he repeated, barely daring to believe what he'd heard. Sarah nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Okay, I'll try." The sound that came out of Marcus was half laugh, half sob. Without thinking, he pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. She was stiff at first, her body rigid with tension and uncertainty. But then, slowly, she softened. Her arms came up around him, hesitant, trembling. People started taking out their phones. They weren't even trying to be subtle about it. They stood there, in the middle of the busy park, while the world kept moving around them. Cars, joggers, people going about their day. But at that moment, it was just them. Two broken people holding on to each other, not caring who was watching. "Come home," Marcus whispered. "Please, just come home." Sarah pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Marcus gently brushed a tear from her cheek. "One step at a time," she nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Marcus picked up her worn backpack, everything she owned in the world, and took her hand. It felt fragile in his cold from the morning air. He hailed a cab, helping her into the back seat like she was made of glass. During the ride to his penthouse, Sarah stared out the window at the city waking up around them. Marcus watched her, still half afraid this was a dream he'd wake up from. When they arrived at his building, the doorman's eyes widened slightly at Sarah's appearance, but a single look from Marcus kept him silent. They rode the elevator up in silence, Sarah's hand still in his. Marcus unlocked the door to the penthouse and held it open. Sarah stood at the threshold, hesitating. 7 years ago, she'd walked out of a different home, choosing death over the life they'd built. Now she was being asked to walk into this one, to choose life, to choose him again. It was terrifying. "Feel free," Marcus said softly, reading her fear. "The door's never locked. You're not trapped here, Emma. You're choosing to be here. There's a difference." Sarah looked at him and saw the truth in his eyes. He meant it. Every word. She took a breath and stepped inside. Marcus closed the door behind them, and for the first time in 7 years, they were home. Not the home they'd had before. Not the home that had suffocated her and blinded him, but a new home. One they would build together, slowly, carefully, with open eyes and listening ears. It wouldn't be easy. There would be hard days ahead. Days when Emma would want to run, when the walls would feel like they were closing in. Days when Marcus would fail, when old habits would resurface, when he'd have to remember to stop and listen instead of moving forward. But they would try. That's what love was, Sarah realized, as she stood in Marcus's penthouse, looking at the man she'd married a lifetime ago. It wasn't perfection. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was two imperfect people choosing each other again and again, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Marcus led her to the guest room, giving her space, giving her choice, and Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. Not healing. Not yet. But the first small breath of possibility. Maybe she could learn to breathe again after all. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated, share the story with friends, and join us for more stories.